Welcome everybody. While we're just waiting, I think there's lots of people joining, which is fabulous and very exciting to see. Um, do put a comment in, both saying hello and where in the world you're joining from, because I have this pegged as an international launch. So I'm keen to see if I've encouraged some of my friends from around the world to join us today, and I can absolutely claim that it is a live international launch. Chester. Oh, well, Scotland. Hi, Anna. London. Yes, Pamela, I know you're close. That's all good. New Jersey. We are officially international. Thank you, Emily. Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you all so much for being here. Las Vegas. Hi, Wendy. Sounds like Martin might be on the train. Joining mobile. This is all good. We'll just give it a couple of minutes. So a few more people join before we get started. But as you can see by my giant poster, which you may have seen in one of my earlier videos, we are indeed here to celebrate the launch of Do Sweat the Small Stuff, which arrived on Kindle. I should have mine handy. Arrived on Kindle yesterday and arrived hopefully in hard copy today. So I'm looking forward to seeing them out in the world and starting to see people's photos with them wherever they are. If you've received your copy, do please post. Do post your photo with where you are. Krista's been doing a fabulous job already taking her copy on an international tour, so that's been lovely. But I'd love to see more of those photos if you have them. Also, Oxford, Wrexham. Lots coming in. Fantastic. Well, let's get started. Um, Thank you all so much for being here. Um, I've had all the confirmation from you all, so I'm assuming you can see us and hear us. So welcome to this, which is the live launch of Do Sweat the Small Stuff. I'm here today with Beth Stallwood and Laura Taylor, who are friends and colleagues and huge supporters of the book, who are here to help me out today so that essentially I'm not interviewing myself, which might get a little odd. So we won't do long intros, but this is just a moment for a brief hello from Beth and from Laura.
Hello. Hello.
You'll hear more from both of them a bit later. So the plan for today is we're going to kick off with Beth doing a bit of an interview with me for about 20 minutes or so with some questions just to introduce the book, a bit about what it's about, the key concepts, some of the ideas, a bit about its genesis, how it came about, why I wrote it, and so on. And if Beth can successfully stop me rambling too much about that, then we will also have a chance for me to answer questions from all of you. So if you have questions about the book, the content of the book, the writing process, really anything, like any questions you have, do put them in the comments as we go. And then Laura will be sort of collating those and keeping an eye on them as we go through, and will ask me some of those a little bit later on. So I think we're probably ready to dive in. So I'm going to hand over to Beth.
Let's do this, Sarah. I am so excited to be here today for your wonderful international book launch session. Do Sweat the Small Stuff here. And I am also very excited that I'm the one that gets to ask you all the probing questions and gets to be nosy, which is one of my core skills in finding out more about how this book came about and more about it. And do obviously keep putting those comments in, your questions in, as we work through. Would love to hear from you. So it's not just what I want to know about, but also we'll move on with Laura on what you want to know about as well. So Sarah, are you ready for the interview portion? Yes.
Let's go.
Let's do it. So the first question I have for you is probably like quite a big one. What is this small stuff that you're talking about? Let's go there.
Yeah, I think it's an important place to start, especially given the book's namesake, which has caused the odd question as we go. I actually want to answer this almost with a bit of an excerpt, a sort of summary and an excerpt from the book. So everyone who's here, I want to do a very brief thought exercise. So think about your day yesterday. Think through every interaction you had with another human being, whether in person or in line, whether verbal or non-verbal, whether remote or in person, whether written, spoken, whatever, all of the interactions you had. And that's whether you, even whether you left the house, chances are you still interacted with people. It could be saying good morning to someone after you got up. It could be greeting people on your first Teams call. It could be saying hello to the barista or saying thank you to the barista. It could be smiling at someone and their cute dog. Any Teams meetings or calls or anything you had during the day. Waving at the security guard if you happen to be in the office. Like all of these things, seeing people at the gym, whatever your day looked like. When you look at our days this way, it's kind of striking because around a core of a few deeper conversations, an awful lot of our interactions are quite small. They're quite short, they're almost inconsequential. And so this is what I'm talking about. A lot of them happen on autopilot. A lot of them we don't put a great deal of thought or intention into. But as I describe it, micro interactions are the moments of connection we have with other humans that occur in their multitudes every single day. All of our micro interactions have consequences, sometimes significant, often unintended. Collectively, they show what matters to us and what we don't care about. They project a continuous message to the world about who we are, what sort of person, and what sort of leader. So that's the small stuff I'm talking about. And I think it matters because I think it influences so much of our lives.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? That idea that so much of what we do is just happens every day. We're doing that. Like I'm the person that is always smiling at the person with the dog. That is probably 50% of my entire life that I'm doing that. So I get that. And that interaction, those little tiny moments, we probably don't really think about them very much. So when did you realize that it was these like micro moments, these interactions that really, really mattered? And how did that develop into where you've got to now? Tell us more.
I think it was one of those things that kind of creeps up on you slowly. So I've been coaching now for 8.5 years-ish. Like it's been a while now. So that is thousands of hours, thousands of conversations, thousands of interactions with other people. And when I started to look back and think about all of those, it was realizing that we didn't spend a lot of time talking about giant conversations. It wasn't like, oh, I've got a really big, difficult conversation that I need to prepare for. It was more like, how do I run this meeting? How do I connect with my team better? How do I build trust with this team member? How do I get my team members to ask me questions when they just go silent and don't ask me for the help that they need? And so a lot of the work we were doing with these tiny little tweaks, it was like, well, what about if you phrased something differently or gave that little bit of extra space for listening or thought about when and where and how you have these conversations a little bit more with a little bit more intention, the impact you might have with them might be completely different. And so it was that sort of accumulation of realizing that was such a pattern in the people I was working with, and that it often wasn't about giant change. It was small tweaks to all of these little interactions they were having that added up to a very big difference. And then I guess the second part of that question in terms of how that coalesced into a book is I've kind of had that itch about wanting to write a book for quite a long time. There's probably some people on this call who would remember me talking about that more than 8 years ago. But I also knew I wanted to wait until I really had something I wanted to say. And this started to feel like a message I wanted to get in the world, because the more I talked about it, the more it felt like other people weren't talking about it. And I didn't want to stop at just the clients and the people I was working with directly. I wanted to actually try and get that message out much wider. And I was going to say the simple way to doing that is, but it's not simple, but it was definitely a way to do that and get it out, get this idea out to a much wider audience, and hopefully get a lot more people talking about it, thinking about it, and through that thinking about their own interactions they have every day.
Yeah. And it is, I love where you start saying it's simple. Writing a book is not a simple process. So well done you for actually making it happen and getting it all to a book. And one that one of the things I'm really enjoying about it is how practical it is and how you've got something to think about and something to do. And actually, when you're talking about like the micro stuff, these micro interactions, it all feels totally possible and doable. It doesn't feel like this massive thing. It's like, oh, I can try that out today. I can give that a go. So it's one thing that I love a practical thing that you can go and try out and practice and see how it works out. And I think that's such a great thing. And I also personally really love the title. I'd love to know more because we have been conditioned, I think, for so many years to not sweat the small stuff. So I love a spicy title that challenges our thinking. When did this as the title come together for you?
So I think the title came quite a long time after the idea, actually. So I had the concept of micro interactions quite early, and originally when I was writing it, it was framed all around engagement. So the idea was first coalescing early in 2022. We were coming out of not exactly, we're still really in the pandemic, still feeling all the effects of that, seeing all the impacts of remote working, basically coming out of the Great Resignation, seeing huge levels of disengagement across the workforce. And so that was the theme I kind of was originally building it around. And I sat with that, and it was probably 10 or 11 months of sitting with that, and it just didn't feel right. It felt, honestly, it bored me, if that's right. I wanted the concept and the title and everything to be something that drew people in, not something that made people go, oh, do I have to read about employee engagement one more time? And so just it was one of those, I can't tell you the moment it came to me, but it was a bit of a like flash of the blindingly obvious kind of, oh right, it's that, it's the small stuff. Call it what it is. Like literally call it what it is. And then I sort of sat with it for a while, and then I remember sharing it with Alison and going, well, thinking about calling it. And she's like, I love it. It's great. Go for it. And that was sort of, it was a bit of a vote of confidence. And the more I shared it with people, it's like, oh, we get it. And that was a great thing through writing the book, was the more I shared the concept, everybody I spoke to had a story. Everyone would immediately say, oh, yeah, I remember that time when, and would describe a tiny moment, a tiny interaction they'd have with someone or something someone had said that 5 years on was still ingrained into their memory. So
yeah, because we're so deeply impacted by those micro moments, as you share in the book, and we've all experienced it on both sides of that. Like we've been receivers of that, we've been givers of that, whether amazing moments or terrible moments, we've been across that spectrum as individuals. So it is very kind of grabbable. It's something that we're like, yes, I totally get it. And the spicy title, I imagine when you got it, you're like, yes, that's exactly what it needs to be, because it does what it says on the tin, right? It just explains exactly what you're talking about. So question for me is a little bit about your readers. Who do you want to get this into the hands of? Who is your like person that you're trying to talk to with this? Because in my head, like it could be for absolutely anybody, but I'm imagining you've got someone in mind.
I mean, yes, that's both a plus and a negative, because it could make it very difficult. No, but it's for everyone. I mean, it is for everyone. I mean, I guess if there was a really core audience that I'm keen to get it to, ultimately it's people who manage people, which is still a pretty big audience, but it's those who have that potential to influence the culture, shape the culture through their actions. One of the strong themes that runs through the book is how when we're in a position of power or authority, whether that's like actual in terms of a job title or just perceived power through our influence or our confidence or whatever, it magnifies the impact of all of our interactions. So things that are actually quite small become much more significant to the receiver. So essentially, if I could get it into the hands of the people for whom that is the case, but who aren't thinking about that, or who don't realize quite how much that happens, where the throwaway comment, I mean, the one that I always think of is the, the manager or the leader who sends that email towards the end of the day and says, oh, can we have a quick chat tomorrow morning?
Oh, the worst. The
Which
worst.
is the best. So the person on the receiving end of that may go away and have a sleepless night. Oh, goodness, why does my boss want to talk to me? What have I done wrong on some level? Oh, have I messed up? Am I about to be fired? Blah, 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 whatever. The simple addition of, can I have a chat to you about X to run over Y, or whatever it is, just a tiny bit of context is the difference between, it fundamentally changes the impact of that conversation. But it takes that person in that position of power or authority, whatever you want to call it, to remember that, to think about it, and to take that tiny fraction of extra effort to write that extra 10 words in that email or that Slack message or whatever it is, so that the person on the other end isn't stewing about it. Now, you can argue there's lots of other other micro interactions will also shape whether that person feels comfortable to then come back and ask of going about what. But again, even their confidence or how much they feel they can do that will be shaped by, does that leader listen? How do they respond when they get asked questions? Do they actually make time? Is their door really open, or are they always busy and frankly very hard to get hold of, and so on? So all of those relationships are built on the micro interaction. So yeah, I'm rambling. That's the piece I want. Those are the people who have that kind of impact that I would really love to see it get into the hands of.
And actually, it takes a little pause and a little bit more effort. It actually doesn't take a wild change in personality or approach. It's how might this message be received by somebody else? And I personally would be one of those people that when I was employed, if someone said that to me, I'd be going, I'm quite clearly getting fired tomorrow. And then I'd be thinking about any tiny mistake I'd ever made. It's one of those things. It's such a little example, but one that I think we can all relate to. And one, as leaders, if we kind of go, if I just take one more second to think about what I'm saying, could I put myself into that position and think how I'd feel in that position? Or even further, other people don't all think like me, so maybe I could think like them for a moment and see what the impact of my power and my position and my authority is within that. So that is a really, really great example. I've got a few more questions for you, but I also want to make sure people are popping the question. I'm doing this because my thing is positioned there, are popping your questions into the comments section, because we don't just want it to be all about the questions I want answered. I want you to answer some questions from the audience as well. So do pop them in there. So what I'd love to know for you now is, like, the book is out there. It did get a US and UK bestseller status yesterday. So I think, like, massive clap and well done for getting that.
And a massive thank you to my networks, because they fully went for it. The number, I got various messages. I've shared this in all my WhatsApp chats. I was like, I've no idea who these people are, but thank you
very much.
I really appreciate it, because it's as an introvert, reaching out to people and sort of asking for support is like, it's it takes something. And so when people respond, a big thank you, because it was so lovely. So yeah, we got 2 Amazon bestseller categories in the UK: business management leadership and, hilariously, political leadership, which this is Amazon being slightly weird with categories, but also possibly dropping a hint. I don't know. And we got #1 in leadership on Amazon.com in the US as well, which was brilliant.
It's amazing. And also, we wouldn't mind them reading this book, the leaders of the political parties, and seeing how some of the stuff might be applied to them. So it's cool. It's a random one. You weren't expecting it, but that's the wonderful surprise of what happens on the World Wide Web of Amazon and how it all works together. So congratulations on that. Such a big achievement. I imagine lots of people who are joining this call today are the people who've been on there getting their Kindles version out there. So, and I imagine lots of them will be arriving in person as well. So we'd love to see all of those pictures, get them out there. It's lovely to see those things. So when the book is in the hands of those people, the people who have an impact, the people who have a leadership position, who manage people across the globe, because this is an international launch, we want to do it across the globe. What difference are you hoping it will make? What impact do you want it to have?
Gosh, that's a great question and quite a hard one. I think the way I've looked at it, and I think I actually say this in the introduction, is that if everyone who reads it just makes 1 or 2 small changes, that in itself will have a massive ripple effect. If even a proportion of the people who read it really embrace it and do the work, that's going to fundamentally change cultures, relationships, people's experience at work, and frankly in life. Like it goes far beyond work. Um, because I think we can. There was a post yesterday on whether we have high trust, or would you rather have a high trust or a high performing employee? I'm like, well, why do we have to have this an either or? I think we can
Mm,
create performance, we can create positive relationships, we can create trust, we can create great engagement. We can actually get to the place where we're doing the work we need to do and enjoying it while doing it. It doesn't have
yeah.
to be something we suffer through. It doesn't have to be at some cost to our health or our mental health or our sanity. But a lot of these things, as you say, it's sometimes it's taking that extra second and thinking. Sometimes it's swapping one thing out for another. So it's not actually additional, it's just taking the second to do something slightly differently that can make such a big difference. So I mean, I would love to see it be part of raising the game in leadership and shifting cultures to be something much more positive. There are clearly, I mean, the fact I still have a job as a coach suggests there's still quite a lot of poor quality leadership out there, and there's still a lot of cultures that are problematic. And while we may not be able to control the whole culture, if we each are making changes, I think we can have that ripple effect. We can start to model something different. We can start to stand for something different and behave differently. And that does have an impact, even if we're still existing in something wider, which is challenging for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd love to see through it.
And actually, when you think about culture, you think about big scale cultural change, whether that's in your organization or, on a global scale, that happens by people doing one thing differently. Lots of people doing
Exactly.
something slightly differently over time, that builds up. That's the only way you ever really change a
Yeah.
culture. So what you're hoping is lots of people get this. You're hoping they will do something differently. And one of the things
Yeah.
that I think will be really good when people do get into this and start doing it is you will have, I think, when you do some of these smart, little tiny changes, you will get some instant feedback. You will get a better reaction. You'll start to see the impact of it really, really quickly. It's not like doing a massive thing and you're like, I have to wait 6 months for the results of this particular thing. You will feel it in that moment. So I think that's, for me, where the practicality also, when you get the reward and you get the recognition for what you're doing really instantly, because you can feel it, you can see it, you keep going, don't you? You then try the
Yeah.
next thing and try the next thing, and that can create such a big change.
And
So
on that point,
yeah.
just not very quickly on that point, because one of the whole last section of the book is really about making this sustainable, making it something that lasts. Because if we pick it up, we do it for a while, we pay attention for a while, and then we put it back down again, the chances are things largely revert back to normal. And so that concept of being willing to experiment, being willing to practice, almost relating to everything as practice. It's not about getting it right. It's not about being perfect at any of this, but it's about being switched on and noticing where things aren't
Mm,
working, or someone isn't quite engaged, or a relationship isn't, there's just something missing, and being willing to play with that. Say, well, what if I tried this? Okay, that didn't quite work. How about this? Great, that was better. Okay, let's do more of that with this person. Now let's move on to the next. And that kind of incremental, well, the continuous practice and the incremental experimenting and learning and iterating, a willingness to do all of that is that's really core to actually making this something that lasts, and embracing that as
yeah,
a way of leading. That they're
yeah.
not, I think at the end I use the analogy of, unlike toast, you're never done in leadership. There's no point where you're like perfectly brown and you can, it's a continuous process. But if you embrace that as a good thing rather than as, a weight around your neck, that I think is the key in all of this.
Amazing. And it is so true, is that, it's continuous. You might do something for one person because people are all different, right? You do something one person, it works a treat. You do something for the next person, you're like, oh, well, that fell completely flat and didn't go as expected. My formula for this person is not the same as my formula for that. You're never in a leadership position going to be able to do one thing really well and it work every time. So that idea of experimenting and keep trying it and do different things and see how it works is a more realistic version, I think, of leadership. And I'd love to see it being rolled out across lots and lots of different places. So 2 questions for you before we head on to Laura, and there's lots of questions coming in to the comments, so keep them coming. It's a two-part question. The first part is, where can we get our hands on a copy of the book? And the second one is, there are lots of people I can see here on the comments who are big fans and big supporters. So what can we all do to help you spread the word and get the message out there?
So it's a slightly cheesy line, but it is available in all good bookshops. So, and in all honesty, so genuinely, it's buy it where works for you. I'm actually a huge fan of supporting independent booksellers. So if you want to buy, one of the options online, if you're not familiar with it, is through bookshop.org, where you can connect to your local bookshop and they get the benefit of you purchasing. They get basically a benefit even though you've bought it online, or go into your local bookshop. I was sent a lovely list of bookshops that are actually stocking it, so I shall be going and doing a bit of a tour and visiting. So really, whatever form and wherever you want to buy it, you can do. Or if you see me in person, I will absolutely sell you a copy. My aim is to never be without one at this point. Yeah. In terms of supporting, one of the biggest things you can do is leave me a review on Amazon. So that does so much for the algorithm. It encourages them to show it to more people. So please do pop onto Amazon and give it a review. Beyond that, share it. Talk to people about it. Talk about the concept. Go do this in the real world. Buy an extra copy for your boss. Give it with care. You know. But you know, the more you can spread the word. If you've got a copy, post a photo, let me know what you take from it. I'm always really interested to hear, like, even amongst those who kindly read it and endorsed the book, it was so interesting to see the different themes that people picked up. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I see this as kind of the beginning of a conversation. So I want to keep that conversation going. So share about it, talk about it, go do the stuff, but definitely leave a review on Amazon, please.
Yes, leave the review. We've also got Alison commenting there about leave a review. So you've heard that message really strongly. Sarah, thanks so much for answering all of my questions.
Thank you.
Such a great book, really insightful. I think there's lots of really practical stuff in it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Laura, because Laura has been keeping her eye on what's going on in the comments so that we can have the questions from the audience. So Laura, over to you.
Hello, right, interesting comments coming up and quite interesting questions. Did you, from Catherine, did you evolve a routine for writing?
Yes, interesting. So the way I originally was, because I'm obviously writing, obviously, I have been writing this alongside my own business, which is, you know, one can't neglect the business because it still pays the bills, because if anyone's not aware, writing doesn't make a lot of money. So I would have a day a week which was allocated to writing, and 1 week a month I would have actually a longer block. So that was most of a week for it. The biggest thing that made a difference to me in my writing was realizing that I was terrible if I tried to write at my desk. So there was a weird association I had where if I was at my desk, I was working, and that wasn't writing. So that meant I would get distracted with emails and everything else. So I went peripatetic. I would write all over the place. Libraries, cafes, coffee shops. If anyone needs them, if there's any either writers or budding writers on this, I can give you a long list of great places to write in London and a list of places to avoid because the Wi-Fi is terrible. But that really worked for me. And once I stopped fighting that, because for a long time I thought, no, I should be able to write at my desk. It's a serious activity. Once I stopped fighting that and realized that I just wrote much better in other places, then it happened a lot faster, let's just say. So that really worked for me. I mean, there's lots more I could talk about the process, chunking things down, dividing it up. I used a piece of software which allowed me to think about it very visually, which was fantastic. That really helped me because I'm very much a visual thinker. So rather seeing, I could sort of move things around and map it out, which also was a really big help. But yeah, those are probably the two main things.
A question from Hannah. What are the first things a leader could do to raise their awareness of their impact on others?
That's a really good question. I would say the biggest single thing, and I do bang on about this quite a lot in the book, is to slow down. A lot of the time we are undone by our busyness and our being in a hurry. And that fraction of an extra second is what tends to move us from a very automatic way of behaving. If you're familiar, some might be familiar with Daniel Kahneman's work of thinking fast and slow, but the fast thinking is our very automatic. It happens all the time. It's our autopilot, if you like. That pause moves us from that to our slower thinking, which allows us to plan and be intentional and do things differently. So then that is then what allows us to make a decision, make a choice. Is the thing I was about to do automatically going to work? Is there something else I might do? Or even just slow down enough to notice the impact of it. So take that extra pause to read the room, read the other person, check in, notice if there's a facial expression or something, and be curious about it. So I would say slowing down, which is a tough thing to do in a world when we're very busy. But it's crucial, and we do usually have much more time. We have more time than we realize, I think. And also the time we sometimes waste by being too quick and then creating a mess and someone not understanding, and we only find that out after a week. And if we can eliminate that, that actually frees up the time for us to take that fraction of a second and slow down.
That's definitely something I take in engineering, where you have to say to people, just stop for a second rather than piling in. Yeah. Okay. From Rebecca, are there things which you now do differently as a result of working on the book?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, it's one of those things, it's probably been a continuous process. It's like as you write about things, especially with what I'm writing about, I'm talking about it more. Um, I think probably one of the biggest things I've got better at through this process, because the more I've thought about it, the more I've realized it's important, is when I realize something hasn't worked or hasn't landed, I go back. I think a lot of time in the past I just pushed through, be like, oh, never mind, whatever, move on, blah, 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 blah. But I'm much better now at kind of pausing and going, okay, no, I actually need to go and address that, because just letting it fester or hoping it was fine, and sometimes I've gone back and they're like, no, it's fine, nothing going on. And that's okay, right? Because it still builds that habit in me, and it still allows me to have that moment of, it's kind of a moment of being vulnerable when you go back to something going, I think I might have kind of screwed up and I'm sorry. I just wanted to check in. But building that has definitely been something I do a lot more than I used to, because I think the more I thought about the impact of doing it, the more I realized how important and how impactful that can be, actually, that someone is paying attention and they're willing to go back and apologize afterwards.
Do you think, from Alison, do you think there is a key message in the book that you would like to see developed further into a new book?
Oh, Alison, that's just for those who don't know, Alison's my publisher. I've only just finished writing this one.
Yeah.
We shall see. It's interesting. There's certainly, I've threatened for a while, and actually originally one of the thoughts for my first book was doing something around feedback, because there's so much around feedback that I think many of us, including me, don't do very well. How we prepare ourselves to receive it and to give it, how we then go through the process of giving it, how we follow up, what we do afterwards, how we work with our teams to help them be more receptive to people, like what the relationships are that underpin. So you never know. There's ideas festering around with that one, so we shall see. There may well be others, but for now I'm going to focus on this one. So nice try, Alison, but not for now.
Oh, so sorry. I think it was Alison Fayers that came from. Not
was it from Alison?
Alison
Wrong
Jones,
Alison. Sorry, Alison.
Sorry,
I'm blaming the wrong person.
Names out.
That's right. So yes, Alison, maybe.
But Alison Jones, who I guess your publisher.
Alison Jones will be leaping on that one. Going, I'm going to sign you up. Yeah, I think the same still goes. I want to take a deep breath and celebrate this one and enjoy this one. And yeah, we shall see. You never know.
Okay, from Alison Jones, then I guess your publisher. What's your best tip for someone just starting on the book writing journey?
gosh, there's about 50. What would I class as my best tip? I mean, I think maybe two things. One is ultimately have to commit, because writing, yes, it's a team effort in some cases because you've got lots of support and lots of people, but it's you. You've got to decide that you're actually going to do this. And for me, realizing what that meant and how I would hold myself accountable to do that was key, because I talked about writing a book for so many years before I actually wrote a book, and that moment to actually commit and do it and say no. And part of that for me was telling a lot of people I was writing a book, because then a lot of people started asking me when they would see the book, and that became a form of accountability. The other one is to really get your idea and your structure sorted up front. And that for that I can sort of refer you back to Alison, because one of the things I did up front was the 10-day business book proposal challenge that Alison runs, which was brilliant and really helped me clarify my ideas, figure out who I was writing it for, like just get all of that sort of structure up front. And while the title did ultimately change and a little bit of the lens, a lot of the fundamentals, I could go back to that business book proposal I wrote back in January 2022, so 2.5 years ago, and actually quite a lot of it's there. Many of the chapter headings are the same, like my audience is largely the same. So if you get that, do the thinking up front, and it will help you. Like if the bones, I think Alison said this to me as well, if the bones are good, it makes the rest of it work so much better, and it makes it much easier to write at the end of the day.
A question from James, I'm going to do surnames now, Catmer. What is your response to all of the Don't Sweat books?
As in don't sweat them. I mean, I do. I say this early in the book. I still agree with that concept. I think we're just talking about different small stuff. So Richard Carlson in the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff book and the associated stuff is basically saying, how would I distill it? It's like care about what matters. Don't care about things that don't matter. So his small stuff is the stuff that we just need to let wash off us and not worry about other people's opinions, ideas. That I mean, it's been a few months since I read the book, but it's that kind of, it's don't get weighed down by minutiae from other people and thoughts and opinions and all of that stuff. That remains true. I still very much agree with that. What I'm saying is there's a different category of small stuff, our interactions with others, which I don't want to get wrapped into that. This is a category of small stuff which I think does matter and we do need to think about. So no, I still very much agree with the concepts in those books.
And one from Kate Anderson, which was actually one of the first questions to come in, but I think it's probably a great one to finish on. If you could ensure that one world leader reads the book, who would it be?
I'm not sure I could narrow it down to one. Honestly, I'd like them all to read it. But I'm also realistic enough that there's some for whom they would probably believe themselves above it and would never take any notice of the content. So it might be a wasted effort. But yeah, I think I would probably be now nailing my colours to the political mast too strongly. But yes, I could. I've just seen that. I could indeed send a batch to number 10. Drop some hints, but I mean, and that's the thing. I wrote it. It's that mixture of, yes, I write it to a kind of specific person I have in mind, because otherwise it becomes too. It doesn't make sense. You don't have a clear voice through the book, but it is something I think almost anyone could get value from. And as Claire Shepherd, one of the daughters, wrote, this is not just about work. Like this will affect all of your relationships if you're thinking about it. So it's very much the more people who get this and start talking about this and start realizing the importance of this stuff, the better. So
fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much to Laura and Beth, to everyone who's been here and dropped their comments in. It's been lovely to see you all. And I'm just really excited. It's finally out in the world. And so this is, as has been pointed out by my fellow authors, this is not the end, this is the beginning. which, given how tired I am today, take a couple of days off before we start that phase. But post about it, share it. Please do write an Amazon review and leave that on there. But above all, act on it. That's the single most thing, the thing that would make me most pleased and excited and satisfied about having put all of my blood, sweat and tears into this, is if I can actually get out there and make a difference. So I look forward to seeing and hearing from all of you and continuing the conversation. Fabulous. I'm going to say goodbye and try and work out how to end this live stream. So thank you very much, everybody. And
thank you.
bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.